Okay, let's get started. Today's study tip says, remember your success. For the past 4 months, which study tips worked for you, which did not? When you take your next science course, remember the successful techniques you used to study for this class. In fact, that's kind of the key to a lot of this, right? Is figuring out how to memorize it, how to study it, how to get it. The topics, of course, are very difficult, but to show that you have understood it, you have to take the test. All right, last chapter. Yay, last lecture. Get excited and stay strong, right? Keep your momentum high as we finish now with female reproductive. Do you remember this anatomy? Woo, look at all those words. Let's start suspensory ligament on the left. We're interested in talking about the ovary today, like last time, the testes mostly. We won't really do much with the tubes here, but we will talk about the endometrium because that is the part that's going to change through the menstrual cycle. So we'll talk, because we're doing a lot of hormones today. Myometrium, perimetrium, vagina, uterus, all these parts. You should remember all these things. And here is where we did talk about fertilization last time. So remember the ovum, the right egg cell, stupid. The ovum is released here into the ampulla is where the fertilization happens, okay? And then the mitosis happens. We're not going to do a lot. In fact, we're not doing really anything on embryology. There is another 5 pages in your book at the end of this chapter on embryology. You should read it because it's fascinating. And if you don't know it or remember it, it's good for you to see. This, you go, through mitosis for 7 days before the blastocyst, it's called, binds to the endometrium, where then it begins to grow into an embryo. So read that because it's interesting, but it won't be on the test, okay? All right, oogenesis. Some people say oogenesis. That's fine, like a zoo. I say uh-oh. Genesis, the making of. The ooh means egg, okay, ovum. So let's start at the top. This picture is a little blurry. The oogonium, like the spermatogonium. Same story. Look at the difference right away, though. You don't get the A and the B cell. So remember I mentioned mitosis in the male gives you the A and B. The B leaves, the A stays, and you make it over and over and over again. Women run out of ova, and this is why. Okay, the oogonium is 46. How many in a primary oocyte? 46 plus a copy, just like the primary spermatocyte. Then we're going to divide. Notice this is not an equal separation. It's not a perfect division of the cytoplasm. So you get this little teeny bit here with half of the chromosomes, but very little of the cytoplasm. And you get another one. So since they're not equal, we're not going to call them secondary oocytes. We're going to call this little one over here a polar body. The big one is still called the secondary oocyte, secondary spermatocyte, but the little one is not. It's called the polar body. Polar, like the north-south, polar, like the water. And it degenerates, so it doesn't make it. And there's really no need to keep it, because we're not going to use it. Now we kept the both secondary spermatocytes, because we use them. So what do I write over here on the right side? How many chromosomes over here in the secondary oocyte in this first polar body? How many? 23 and a copy, right? And then you're going to go through the second phase of mitosis only if there's fertilization. So you'll start it, you go through prophase 2, metaphase 2, and that's where it is ovulated. So the secondary oocyte is ovulated in metaphase 2. And then on the left here it says, if no fertilization, secondary oocyte disintegrates. Okay, degenerates, it's actually called atresia. And then the secondary oocyte will only finish, so we have to see, we did prophase, metaphase, so it has to do anaphase and telophase if the spermatozoa comes up to it, if there's fertilization. Then it will finish and it will finish really fast. And remember, it has too many chromosomes, right? So it has to hurry up and dump off 23 so that it has 23, so that when the zygote, or so that when the sperm comes, you get a zygote with 46. So it's all super fast how that happens. So we write 23 here for this cell. If the sperm comes, there'll be 23. And then a second polar body, which also degenerates. Okay, so the zygote at the end, 46. 23 from the ovum, 23 from the spermatozoon. Okay, so now we write it down. Oogenesis is the production of ova. Before birth, the oogonium has 46 chromosomes, begins meiosis, and becomes primary oocytes. Those primary oocytes stop in prophase 1 of meiosis with 46 and a copy, and this is how the baby girl is born. So she has all these primary oocytes in prophase 1. She will not make any more. These are the ones that will be her future children someday. After puberty, several become active, but usually only one finishes meiosis unless you're crazy like me and have triplets. Just one, humans. Primary oocyte goes through meiosis 1 with an unequal division. You get a small polar body and a large secondary oocyte, each with 23 and a copy. Both cells begin meiosis 2. The polar body doesn't finish. Instead, it degenerates. The secondary oocyte pauses again, this time in metaphase of meiosis 2 with 23 and a copy. It is now ovulated and will finish meiosis 2 only if there is fertilization. So when the sperm shows up, it drops off the DNA, and secondary oocyte quickly finishes its last division to make 23 chromosomes. So our conclusion is 1 functional gamete, the ovum, with most of the cytoplasm, and 2, maybe just 1 polar body that degenerates, depending on whether or not it makes it through meiosis part 2. Okay, so we'll just say 1 functional gamete and 2 polar bodies. Okay, ovarian cycle. This is some of the tough stuff. You should have learned all these words. I expect you to know them all from anatomy. So if you don't, please review. This is a picture of the entire, we're going to assume a 28-day cycle. And if I had all of you in class, I'd say, how many of you have a 28-day menstrual cycle? And like 10 people would raise their hand. How many of you more? Another 10 people. How many of you less? Another 10 people. So it's just a real variety. Not 28 days is what we use to teach the lesson, but it's always more or less, and it depends on the month and the stress and all kinds of things. Okay. So most women, by the way, already know this. It's the guys that we're going to teach this to. A lot of guys don't know this stuff, and so we are there learning. Okay. So the primary follicle is at the beginning of the cycle. So 28-day cycle, we begin here with primary follicle. The end of the cycle, so we're going to go around clockwise to the back to where we started with the corpus albicans. So it goes primary follicle, growing follicle, secondary follicle, mature, also known as Graafian follicle, or a tertiary follicle. 3 different names for it. However you want it, it's fine. You get this mature follicle with the largest antrum. This part is called the antrum. And then you ovulate. Here's the ovulated ovum. It has, remember the layers around it we talked about last time, the corona radiata, the zona pellucida. Then it degenerates into, and changes its structure, the follicle, into the corpus luteum, which is, the corpus means body, luteum means yellow. Back to the corpus albicans, which is the white body. Okay, so let's talk about the first part. Okay, the first half of the menstrual, the ovulation is in the middle, day 14 of the 28 days. So let's talk about the first half of the cycle, and then the second half of the cycle, and then ovulation in between. Okay, so there's 3 phases: follicular, ovulation, and luteal. So let me show you an animation, and then we'll write it down.
A primordial follicle consists of an oocyte surrounded by a single layer of squamous granulosa cells. A primordial follicle becomes a primary follicle as the granulosa cells become enlarged and cuboidal. The primary follicle enlarges, and the granulosa cells form more than one layer. The zona pellucida forms around the oocyte. The structure is called a secondary follicle when fluid-filled vesicles develop among the granulosa cells and a well-developed capsule, or theca, becomes apparent around the granulosa cells. The theca possesses internal and external layers. The structure is called a mature follicle when the fluid-filled vesicles form a single antrum. At full maturity, the oocyte is located in the cumulus mass. During ovulation, the oocyte is released from the follicle, along with some surrounding granulosa cells of the cumulus mass, called the corona radiata. Following ovulation, the granulosa cells divide rapidly and enlarge to form the yellow corpus luteum. When the corpus luteum degenerates, it forms the white corpus albicans.
Okay, the follicular phase, days 1 through 13 out of 28. The little thing we saw at the beginning was called the follicle. It is an oocyte plus layers of cells around it. Okay? We start with a primary follicle. It has inside of it a primary oocyte. So remember 46 plus a copy. And it has granulosa cells. So this is a new word, but the layer around it is called granulosa cells. Secondary follicle has still a primary oocyte in it, so don't get confused. Secondary still has a primary oocyte, and the layer of granulosa cells starts to thicken. And remember, when this is ovulated, we don't call them granulosa cells anymore, we call it the corona radiata. And we gain another layer of cells called thecal cells. The layer of glycoproteins starts to build up. Remember, when it's ovulated, it's called the zona pellucida. And we start to see the fluid-filled vesicles, which is called an antrum. Alright, that's all in a secondary follicle. And like if we're looking at the days, the primary follicle is days 1, 2, secondary, or maybe 3, secondary 4, 5, 6, 7. We're trying to get up to 14. Okay, so this mature follicle, and now you're going to see towards the end, like days 10, 11, 12, it's when you're going to have now a secondary oocyte. So now we've lost the polar body. We now have how many chromosomes in this secondary oocyte? 23 plus a copy. A really large antrum. And the other follicles, remember I said you start with 5 or 6, 7. They have degenerated along the way, so that usually only one mature follicle makes it to ovulation. And that degeneration of the other follicles, or sorry, of the other, other follicles, but the other oocytes is called atresia. A-T-R-E-S-I-A, atresia. Okay? Step 2, ovulation. You can see here, during ovulation, there's a, it's an explosion. Okay, it's explosive. With that fluid, it starts to build up pressure, pushes it out, so that it's caught by the fimbriae of the uterine tube. And some women, how many of you feel it? Some women say they can feel it. Now, I had students tell me this, and I'm like, oh no, that's crazy. But then I started paying attention. So you start paying attention, see if you feel it. Okay, you should know when it's coming. You should be keeping track of this stuff on a calendar. Guys, have you felt it? No, I'm messing with you. Corona radiata around the outside. This is, remember, what phase? Secondary oocyte in metaphase 2. Okay, that's day 14. The mature follicle ruptures. Secondary oocyte is arrested in metaphase of meiosis 2. Then we get to the third phase, which is the second half, where we get this change in the corpus, in the follicle cells becoming the corpus luteum and the corpus albicans. So it's called the luteal phase, days 15 to 28. The formation of the corpus luteum. So now the follicle cells fill with lipids. These are important, these lipids we'll talk about more, are important for maintaining the endometrium of the uterus. If there is no pregnancy, the corpus luteum degenerates to become scar tissue called the corpus albicans, and if there is pregnancy, the corpus luteum persists until the end of the pregnancy. Okay? Then we repeat. over and over, and you can see how 5 or 6 start each month, how you could run out by age 50 or whatever age women go through menopause. Okay, hormones. Let's talk about those. So just like the male, same ones. The hypothalamus makes gonadotropin-releasing hormone, GnRH. The anterior pituitary makes LH and FSH. The estrogens, of course, different now than the male, made by those granulosa cells. So remember, around the oocyte, the follicle is made of granulosa cells. They make estrogen. A small amount is made by the corpus luteum, a little bit. Low levels of estrogen, and I'm abbreviating E here because I don't have enough space. Low levels of estrogen prevent FSH and LH release. This is not negative feedback, right? This is low preventing, something we don't usually see. High levels of estrogen stimulate FSH and LH release. So this is a little bit different, this part of the story. Don't ask me why, just how it works. And progesterone is produced by the corpus luteum. So remember we said it fills with lipids, and progesterone is a steroid hormone. Its purpose is to signal the growth of the endometrium. So it leaves, remember these are steroid hormones, they just slip right out, go into the blood supply, where their target is a receptor on the endometrium. So that's the inner layer of the uterus. And so it signals growth of the endometrium. If there is no pregnancy, the levels drop. Okay, so it becomes the corpus albicans, right? And this signals menses, which is a woman getting her period. Okay, so the whole lining, the endometrium, is washed away at the end of the menstrual cycle. And then we rebuild, and we'll talk about this more, the uterine cycle. And the whole reason for all this happening is the progesterone. Okay, so if there is pregnancy, remember the corpus luteum stays intact, stays big and large, and continues to make progesterone. So there's no menses. If there is a pregnancy, by the way, and progesterone levels drop, then what's that called when you lose the pregnancy? That's called a miscarriage, right? So progesterone levels, in fact, that's one reason for some women to have miscarriages, is progesterone levels fall. And it signals for the loss of the endometrium. Okay, so we'll talk about that miscarriage in a little bit. Okay, here's your group question with no group, just you at home. Most triplets, we gotta talk about triplets, right? Most triplets born today are the result of infertility treatments. One commonly used drug is called Clomid, clomiphene citrate. It stimulates the pituitary into producing more follicular stimulating hormone. I usually call it just follicle stimulating hormone. I don't know why I wrote that. Follicular stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH. Explain how Clomid produces triplet pregnancies. Do you think most triplets are fraternal or identical? And what might be the dangers of a triplet pregnancy? Okay, so pause the show and think about this. Okay, so how does Clomid produce triplet pregnancies? Well, if you stimulate more FSH and LH, FSH and LH tell just like in the male, they tell the body to make, testes to make more sperm, and the female tells them to make more eggs. Okay, so you make more eggs, and you can see how many eggs there are with a sonogram. So remember that large antrum, fluid-filled antrum. When you do a sonogram, dark fluid things fill up the screen with black. Okay, so you can see black, and then you see, you can't really see the oocyte, it's too small, but you can see the black part. So you know where and how many are there. Okay, so you can see 3, 4, 5, 6, however many are supposed to be there. Okay, now if you see 8, you would not encourage the person to add sperm, okay, to make 8 babies. Remember this story in the news, right? Octuplets, very dangerous, right? So making 3 is still dangerous. So do you think most triplets are fraternal or identical? Well, if you produce more eggs, say 3 eggs, are the children fraternal or identical? They're fraternal, right? If you make 2 eggs, and one of them actually can split, that's actually very common. And I know, because I have triplet support groups. Oh yeah, can't do this by myself. And I have a lot of friends actually that have 2 eggs, and then one of them splits and grows into 2 identical children and 1 fraternal. But in general, most triplets are 3 separate eggs. And it's because most triplets are now, when you see twins and triplets, usually because of fertility treatments like Clomid or IVF or all those things. My children happen to be all natural. The word is spontaneous. Don't you like that? They're spontaneous triplets. So they just happen, just 3 eggs. And in fact, it's more common in some races than others. Like you'll see, especially in African American families or in Africa, more twins and triplets. Those mothers make more LH and FSH, and it does run in families. So twins and triplets. So you'll see that if you meet someone who's a twin, ask them, and usually it runs in the family. If a woman gets older, it's more likely to have. They're more likely to have twins and triplets. So as you get older, if you're waiting to have kids, just so you know, it's more common as you get older because the body kind of, gets out of whack and produces that. The identicals can be, you find that at any age that people have identicals, but the multiple ovulations can be usually younger. Or, let me tell you, there's another one. I've heard people going off the birth control pill, they don't get their cycle back in normal mode before they try to have kids, and then they're more likely to have twins or triplets. Oh boy, scares you, huh? What might be the dangers of a triplet pregnancy? So of course the mother carrying, 100 pounds of baby, all the extra blood supply that she has to feed these babies makes increased blood pressure. Do you know what that's called? The dangerous high blood pressure? It's called preeclampsia. Have you heard of that? Can cause the mother to have convulsions, seizures. So they watch that very carefully. The triplets, the babies, danger for them is lack of blood supply, fighting for space, and then when they're born, of course, they're always very, very small. I do know some triplets born big, but most of them are like 3 pounds. And mine were 3, and we were really happy with that. They made it to 33 weeks. We always count weeks, with pregnancy for triplets. So the goal is 28 weeks and your total is 39, 40 weeks for regular pregnancy. So the best number to get to is 28 to be living, okay? 26 is very dangerous. We made it to 33, so we were really happy with that. Oh, I have a story about a student of mine. I went to a triplet moms meeting in San Jose. I have a support group of moms, triplets of all different ages, so I get to hand-me-downs and give away hand-me-downs and talk about what comes next and help someone else. And I went to a meeting, and there was one of my students from like 5 years before. And I was like, oh, how do I know her? Like, I never remember your name. Like, I know that I know you, but when I see you at Safeway or whatever someday, just go, hey, Dr. Hayes, tell me your name. I'm so-and-so, I took your physiology class. That would be very helpful for me. So I don't know, like, is she the receptionist at my doctor's office, or she work at the grocery store? How do I know this girl? And then I remembered she's a student. And then I remembered, oh my gosh, she's like the smartest student I ever had. Like, perfect score on a couple of the tests. And of course, she went on to be a great nurse. And then, so I was like, wow, here you are. What happened? Where are you working? She's like, oh, I'm at ICU. And I thought, of course, really bright student, going to do ICU and challenging, and I said, here you are. We see each other at a triplet meeting and you're having triplets. She's like, no, Dr. Hayes, I'm actually having quadruplets. It's like, of course, she did everything better. Everything one step above. So I said, wow, quadruplets. I can't even imagine quadruplets, right? And I mean, one more, it's exponential, right? So she said, yeah. I go, what are you having? And she said, I'm having 4 girls. Oh my gosh. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I kept in touch with her and her husband because he was taking care of her. He was also a nurse. And it turns out she made it to 36 weeks. Her babies were 5 and 6 pounds. She had 4 5 and 6 pound babies. And they went home before she did because, she had a C-section. And they're just big, happy, healthy girls and growing. And of course, she had hired a lot of help. Brought family from the Philippines to help her and everything. Anyway, love that story. Okay. This is we're going to look at the hormones. We're going to look at LH, look at FSH, look at progesterone, and estradiol. Okay, estrogen. And we're going to do the 2 weeks before ovulation. So this is not helpful. They labeled this as 15-10-50. That's not nice. We want day 14 right in the middle. So we'll do the 2 weeks before, and then we'll discuss the chart for the 2 weeks after. Okay, so LH, FSH, from the pituitary, progesterone from the corpus luteum, and estradiol from the granulosa cells. The LH is low, and then it spikes at day 14. FSH also low, spikes at day 14. Progesterone low the whole time, right, because there's no corpus luteum. And then estradiol is low the first week, but as the second week, notice that as it's low, this is low, but as it starts to rise, remember, as estrogen goes up, LH and FSH go up. So notice that this peak here of estrogen is about day 13, and the peak of FSH and LH is the next day, 14. And it's this peak, this LH and FSH, we call it the surge, like a wave, a big giant wave coming through it, is what causes ovulation from the follicle. So that's why giving the Clomid, which causes FSH and LH, you could give shots of FSH to somebody, and that would cause them to make more eggs and to ovulate more. Let's see. So let's do hormones. Ovary week 1, the follicle grows, so the estrogen is low because there's very few granulosa cells. Remember, the low estrogen keeps LH and FSH low. Progesterone is low because there's no corpus luteum. Week 2, follicle starts to grow. It's making more estrogen. The estrogen maxes at day 13. The high estrogen signals LH and FSH release. LH and FSH surge at day 14, causing ovulation of the secondary oocyte in metaphase 2. Okay, now you're pro at this. And progesterone is low still because there's no corpus luteum. Okay, now the second half of the cycle, notice the LH and FSH drop, and that's because estrogen drops, and estrogen drops because the follicle cells are becoming the corpus luteum. It does corpus luteum makes a little bit of estrogen, but not enough to really change these. They stay kind of stable and low, LH and FSH, but progesterone spikes. And remember, the maximum for progesterone is going to be at day, 14, 19, 20, 21. And then, but as you get down, and there should be, at this point, at the end of the 3rd week, that's when, if there's going to be a zygote, fertilization, this is when you have the binding of the embryo into the endometrium. If you don't, then the progesterone levels will drop. If you do, then see how this orange line goes up. It would just stay up, 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 up for 9 months, okay, the whole way. And of course, then all these others everything else would stay the same, but the progesterone would stay high. So week 3, estrogen levels drop. This decreases LH and FSH release. The follicle becomes a corpus luteum. The corpus luteum makes progesterone. Progesterone levels increase, and this also makes some estrogen. And if there is no pregnancy, the corpus luteum degenerates, estrogen, progesterone decrease, and if there is a pregnancy, the HCG, do you remember this from anatomy? Human chorionic gonadotropin. If you don't, you need to know this word. The chorion, do you remember the chorion? Of the embryo makes a hormone. It's called human chorionic gonadotropin, also known as HCG. HCG sustains the corpus luteum so that it makes progesterone. Okay. What else do I have here? Progesterone remains high throughout the pregnancy. The embryo also makes progesterone. So do I have space on here? I did bring out my fancy little pen today. Let's see if I can make this work. Let's do my pointer, the felt tip pen. Let's see if I can draw here with my pen. Oh yeah, that's better than using my mouse. Okay, so let's look at progesterone levels. I'll just write P here, and then we'll do the months. Okay, so let's do how many months in a pregnancy? 9 months. We divide it into trimester. Okay, so months, MOS. The progesterone levels, remember progesterone comes from the corpus luteum, right? It's actually a lot of progesterone until about the 3rd month. Then the corpus luteum stops making most of it, stays low. And instead at this time, the embryo is growing and it makes progesterone, and it makes a lot more by the 3rd month. Now, if the embryo is not growing properly, the progesterone levels will not go up and they will stay down. So do you see what happens if the embryo is not growing? Progesterone levels stay low. Plus, it's low because the corpus luteum stops making it. So this time, right around 3 months here, is the most common time for what? For a miscarriage. Yes. So it's because of the drop in progesterone. Some women eventually perhaps there was something wrong with the fetus, and so it was good to have a miscarriage. Sometimes women have them often, and 2-3 times, and then they'll say, you know what, the embryo was growing fine. The problem is the progesterone. So let's give you progesterone, not usually shots, they usually give you some kind of cream or something, so that progesterone levels stay high to help continue the pregnancy. And sometimes then that's really helpful for women who miscarry often. Okay? The other reason to tell you that is a lot of people get pregnant, and I've had friends do this. They get pregnant and they tell everybody, and then they miscarry, and then they have to tell everybody the sad part. And they don't want to, go through that. Some women like to say, so that if they do miscarry, they can have someone to share their sadness with. So just so you know, a lot of people don't talk about it until after the 3rd month, and that's the reason why. Okay, so other stories, the birth control pill, Depo-Provera, all those shots. Have you heard of Mirena, the IUD, intrauterine device? Those are all pills or shots or drugs of some type. They're hormones that prevent that surge of LH and FSH. So remember that at day 14, that big peak in LH and FSH, that's what causes ovulation. All these things prevent that peak. And they do it by keeping levels of progesterone high the whole time. So progesterone and estrogen high the whole time. So if you keep it high, then there's no low-high thing to make LH and FSH peak. So the birth control pill was designed to keep estrogen levels constant, and then women didn't know, and it was meant to be taken constantly, so that you would never ever get your period. How nice is that? Except women then were like, well, I didn't take it one day, am I pregnant? So they go, okay, fine, take it for 3 weeks and then go off 1 week so that you bleed, so you can see you're not pregnant, and then take it again for 3 weeks and off a week. So the package of pills, I know most women here probably know this. Guys, they're like, what? Package of pills has 3 weeks of hormones and then 1 week of sugar pills, just to keep you in the habit of taking it. I mean, you don't have to take those pills. You could pop one out and just throw it away. You don't have to take it. But it is important to take these every day, because the body just gets rid of it, right? And so you have to keep the levels high. And if you forget a day, you're supposed to take it. You can read the directions. The Depo-Provera shot is a shot people get every 3 months. And I had a student do Depo-Provera, and she got pregnant. It was because she didn't do the shots every 3 months. Like, she was late getting in there, and every time she goes for a shot, they make her do a pregnancy test to make sure she's not pregnant, because they don't want to keep giving the shots. Sure enough, one time she was pregnant. So there you go, baby. Mirena is an IUD. An IUD is a little piece of metal that floats through the uterus to bounce around in case there is fertilization, and this prevents the embryo from implanting into the uterus. So Mirena one is really popular right now. It's dipped in hormones, so it gives you the hormones. Okay, let's see. The rhythm method. Have you heard of this? And when pregnancy can occur, how long does the ovum live, how long does the spermatozoa live? We can talk about that. If you say you do want to get pregnant, someday you might. Let's see if I can draw this here. Let's do a month. Let's draw here a month. We'll go out to 28 days. Okay, 28-day cycle. Ovulation is at 14, and let's see. Let's see what so the egg is ovulated here. Let's make an egg circle. And the egg lives how long? The ovum lives how long? 24 hours. So say it lives to day 15. Okay, for 24 hours you have the ova. So the sperm live how long? So how long does the ovum live? Let's write here 1 day. Spermatozoa 3 days. Okay, so if you have sperm present 3 days before, so what day is that? Day 11. Let's draw a sperm. Then you could get pregnant. Okay, because although you think, oh, I'm not going to get pregnant, or day 14, you can, because the sperm can still be hanging out, living that long. This assumes, and of course you could get pregnant on day 12, 13, 14, day 15, right? Because so really there's like 4 days here, definitely, when you could get pregnant. When is ovulation? Well, it turns out that it's always 2 weeks. This is getting messy. 2 weeks prior to the end. Okay, 2 weeks. Well, what if you are stressed out and you have a final for your physio class, you don't know it, and you don't finish your period until day 30? Okay, then actually ovulation happens at day 16. When normally you might think you wouldn't get pregnant at 16, well, now the egg is there at 16, and you could get pregnant at 16. So this is the reason to use birth control if you're trying not to get pregnant. Okay, abstinence, of course, is the best policy if you don't want to get pregnant. If you do want to get pregnant, you can do all kinds of tests. There's things you can buy over the counter at Long's, go in the back or CVS or whatever and ask for it. You can measure body temperature. So I don't know if you know this, but the basal body temperature is about a half a degree lower, and then spikes up and goes higher at ovulation. Some women, we just said, can feel ovulation. So you just, go, oh, ovulating, honey, come home early. Okay. You can ask me questions if you want to know more about this. And menopause. Menopause, we just talked about several times, because women run out of eggs and they stop. If you don't make eggs, you also don't make the granulosa cells. And without that, you don't make estrogen. And without that, we talked about bone density and bone problems to go with that. Okay, so osteoporosis. And amenorrhea means irregular cycles or no cycles. That's very common in girls beginning their periods, and also common as women get towards the end of their menstruating years. It gets an irregular cycle till eventually it stops. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions about all this stuff. The last thing, I know it's a long lecture, is we did the top picture, did the bottom picture. No, we need to do the bottom picture. We did. Let me have to get my pointer back. Pointer, options, arrow. Okay, so we did the FSH, LH. We did estrogen. We did the follicle. So now we need to do the endometrium. So the first day of the cycle is when a woman starts bleeding. And so in this picture we show the endometrium, sorry, gotta find my pointer again, being lost. Okay, it's broken up, and this exposes blood vessels, and that's what the bleeding is from. And then that cycle, part of the cycle, is called menstruation. And then the regrowth is from the estrogen. It gets really, really thick by this maximum here, day 23. It looks like I said 19 earlier. That wasn't enough. 23 is the most, and that's because, well, the estrogen helps to rebuild, but the progesterone maximizes with lots of vesicles and blood vessels. All this is in hopes of having every month. It's amazing, huh? Every month the female body is ready for an embryo. Okay? And, you know, say you only want to have 2 kids in your life. It's only twice that the uterus really uses that. So right here would be the binding. It would give the embryo nutrients that it needs. If, though, there is no pregnancy, then the progesterone drops, and then that causes a loss of the endometrium, which begins day 1 of menstruation again. And this just happens over and over. It's like building a nest and then tearing it down and rebuilding. You never know. And of course, our bodies don't know that, you know, this is the year 20 whatever, and we don't want to have babies all the time, or doesn't know that there's food around all the time. And so our bodies, women's bodies, are always prepared. They store adipose tissue because you never know. Okay, so it's always prepared. Excellent setup, actually. So the 3 phases of the uterine cycle, and then we will be done. The menses is days 1 to 5, and this, women in the class will tell you, also varies. Some longer, some shorter. The endometrium layer is removed, blood vessels are exposed, and there's bleeding. The proliferative phase is days 6 to 14. The estrogen stimulates the growth of the endometrium. It thickens. There's more blood vessels and glands. Days 15 to 28 is called the secretory phase. There's even more growth of the endometrium due to progesterone from the corpus luteum. If there is no pregnancy, progesterone levels drop, and this signals menses or menstruation. And if the pregnancy is there, then the progesterone stays high and it keeps the endometrium intact. Otherwise, there would be a miscarriage. Okay? Whew, we're done.